Snobs podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Snobs podcast. We have a very special episode for you today. Today, I'm joined by Trevor Stottlemeyer from Ambassador Radio and Media and Will McGuire. They've brought to me a movie to check out, and we're going to talk about it in depth, and it is the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. I saw it when I was a kid, but I never saw it when I was an adult, and I finally got to go see it again because of this, and I had a great time with it. Definitely need to check this out. Let me tell you a little bit about it. The 36th Chamber of Shaolin, directed by Lau Kar-Luing, tells the story of a young man living under the oppressive Qing dynasty. After his family and friends are slaughtered by the Manchu government, he flees to the Shaolin temple seeking refuge and strength to exact revenge. Initially rejected by the monks, he gains acceptance and embarks on a rigorous journey of martial arts training, and is just a truly fantastic movie. It stars Gordon Liu as Santee, who is the main protagonist of the film, who's training throughout all the ways of Shaolin. And I have to tell you, if you have not seen it, definitely go check this out. It was made by a martial artist with true love for the craft, who really wanted to see it shine through in films. So let's get started. We're going to sit down with Will, we're going to sit down with Trevor and talk about it. I can't wait. Make sure you hang on for the end because we're going to do a couple of reviews. Remember to follow us over on Patreon, hit like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell. Now let's get started. Hey guys, thank you so much for showing up for this episode of the podcast. I have with me today two great minds who we're going to talk about this fantastic movie, starting with Trevor Stottlemeyer from Ambassador Media and Radio. Trevor, thank you for coming back on the show again. And Will McGuire is joining us to talk about this fantastic movie, the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. That's right. We're going to get into it. But before we get started, Trevor, tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
Well, number one, I want to thank you again for having me on. It's been quite an honor to be, taken into some of these shows and everything. I'm the producer and host of Ambassador Radio, which is kind of on hiatus at the moment due to the fact that there's some reimagining that hopefully will happen. I've been a film lover since I was a child. That's about it. You can find it at ambassadorradio.org. You can follow the socials and fun things like that. So
I love it. And Will, welcome to the show for the first time. Thank you so much for joining in. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you feel about this movie?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Will McGuire. I'm senior cinematic correspondent for forcesofgeek.com and a contributing writer for City on Fire. And this is one of the four films that made me a lifelong Shaw Brothers fan, and it's always a real joy to discuss Lau Kar-Luing's work with friends. So I'm extremely pleased to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. And I am again, Trevor. I came to you and asked you to pick out a movie for us to watch and discuss like we did back in the old days. And you did not disappoint. This is one I saw on TV as a kid, but seeing it for the really, I would say, fresh eyes first time and new perspective as an adult. Brilliant film. I think everybody should see this. If you're a cinephile, go watch this movie. It's not just, and again, first of all, I don't want to write off any Kung Fu movies, but it's not what we know of as quintessential Kung Fu sort of stereotype movies. This has so much passion behind it, so much wonderful choreography in the martial arts world, everything. And you guys, thank you so much for again being on to talk about it. Thank you, Trevor, for recommending this movie to discuss. I'm super excited. But let's start with you guys. Let's start with you, Trevor. What is this movie to you, first and foremost?
Well, I'll be the first to say I've never been a huge fan of Shaw Brothers or the genre, but I've always respected it. And there are several movies that, I hold in high esteem. But it was kind of strange. I had seen this movie several times. I'd always enjoyed it. But the mythology behind this film as it pertains to hip hop and RZA and how this particular film assisted him in reimagining his life at a time where he basically had to say, I'm not doing this, or I'm going to put everything to it. So when I came back to this film, it was at a time that I was just coming out of about a year, maybe a little more, of severe depression, atahonia, and I was in a place I had never been before. So when I started to actually get rolling a little bit, for some reason it stuck in my mind. I've been a lifelong Wu-Tang fan, but it kind of stuck in my mind how it was helpful to RZA, and I don't know why, but I decided to put it on, and it really spoke to me in the fact that it really is not just a kung fu film. It's not just a Shaw Brothers film. It is a film about endurance, training, finding yourself in something larger, and it helped as kind of a blueprint for how maybe I can actually start functioning as a human again. So that's a little bit of the background.
I love it. I love it. And Will, what's your background with this movie? I know it says it kind of, and to kind of like juxtapose that, this sets you off on the Shaw Brothers, right?
Yeah. So to give you the little background on me as a film buff, when I was young, I went to see Operation Condor with my father and the Jackie Chan film, and it set me as a lifelong fan of Hong Kong action. And through Hong Kong action, I discovered John Woo, and then Takeshi Kitano, and then Jean-Pierre Melville, and I was off to the races with film. But I've always loved Hong Kong cinema, most of all. And for me, growing up in college and high school, I didn't have experience with kung fu films before Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, other than like what was on at noon on Saturdays. And you get those panned and scanned, grainy, sort of cut up stuff on network television. And then Dragon Dynasty, which was a DVD label, put out Shaw Brothers remastered films. And one of the first four was the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. And as Trevor alluded to, because of the RZA and Wu-Tang Clan, it was the first one that I watched. And I was blown away by the character of the filmmaking, as you said, by the performances, but also by the philosophy that was behind it, because that's the subject I was studying in school at the time. And this is a key film for me that caused me to think more deeply about the history of Hong Kong filmmaking and about Hong Kong filmmaking before, even though this film is after Bruce Lee's death chronologically. Thinking about the Shaw Brothers as an entity and back into the history of Hong Kong cinema as a whole.
Wow. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that with us, and especially because that's something I'd really like to delve into, is not just Asian cinema as it's made, as it's been developed, like the evolution of it, everything else. Like that's such a fascinating idea, because we get so much about Hollywood and we get other tastes of different countries, Bollywood, things like that. But really, when it comes to Asia and the behind the scenes, it's just, man, they were on there, especially in the 60s, 70s, they were on a whole different plane, in my opinion. And still to this day make some fantastic films. Now when it comes to martial arts, I want to get more into the choreography of this side of it. It's not the first martial arts film. It's not the first time we've seen really progressively used martial arts in movies. But this is taking it back to a more ancient time. And one thing I really did respect about learning about this was that the director, now I'm going to butcher his name, so bear with me, but it's, I believe it's Lau Kar Loon. Is that it? And he was a martial artist. He grew up in a martial arts family, from what I read. And so this was so important to him to bring Shaolin to life, to really show martial arts as it is in film. And this is one of the first instances to really do it with a more fanciful side, I guess, like a more strict to the teachings of Kung Fu, but also with a more whimsical and fanciful side. What do you guys think about the choreography in this? And are there any insights that you guys can share about it?
Trevor, would you like to go first?
This is all you. I mean, it's beautiful, and but as far as this element, that's you, Will.
Lau Kar Loon goes back to the very beginning of Chinese action films. From the time before World War II all the way to about 1967, China produced very few swordsman films. They were thought to be a public danger. After the end of the Civil War, people come to Hong Kong, and they fell in love with this series of short films about Wong Fei Hung that was almost like television, because they didn't have television. Now, in the late 60s, to try and not overwhelm us here, Shaw Brothers noticed the success that Japanese Shambara samurai films were having on Hong Kong audiences, and tried to update the wuxia film with some of those films' conventions. And the first major success from the studio was Cheng Che's 1967 film, The One-Armed Swordsman, Dubai Dao. Lau Kar Leung's in that movie.
Amazing film.
And he's doing choreography on it. And through relationship with Cheng Che, his influence spreads the whole history of Shaw Brothers action until a film called Marco Polo, where there was some falling out between Cheng Che and Lau Kar Leung, where he went off on his own. Lau Kar Leung had developed a Shaolin cycle of films for Cheng Che that were all about the burning of the Shaolin temple by the Manchu and revenge taken for it. But this is the first time that, as you said, we get the training of Shaolin from the perspective of a teacher, a martial artist in his own right. Because Cheng Che and the great directors who preceded Lau Kar Leung and the Shaw Brothers roster, like Sun Chung, they were film critics. They were film writers who came in much the way that Godard or Truffaut did, came into the business. Lau Kar Leung came in through Peking opera and through choreography. And this is his fourth film. All of them were made in the span of a year and a half. And the polish, the unity of message like you're talking about, and the skill of the choreography, I personally think in the scenes where Gordon Liu is challenging the head of the monastery to be able to leave, and he comes back again and again with different weapons until he sort of figured him out. That's where you start to see what Lau Kar Leung brings that no other kung fu director brought at that time. The idea of the fight itself can tell the story. Without words. So I hope that brings a little context to how what was revolutionary in this film and where it came from.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. For me, it was. I mean, I definitely all of that shined through. And that's what I appreciate about the filmmaking, especially, again, Asian cinema. It does show more than it tells. And I love that. Always. That is a pinnacle in filmmaking, in my opinion. Like, stop thinking of dialogue. Quentin Tarantino. No, I kid, of course. But like, who, of course, made a movie that was Gordon Liu's in it. Kill Bill Volume 2. He had so much respect for this movie as well. So I loved the fight sequence in this. I loved everything we get at Shaolin. From the time Santee starts, or he's taken in, until he leaves, everything is training. He never is not that he's being tested. It's almost that like they're giving him a chance to test himself and keep it going. And his drive is fantastic. I love the character. I thought it was brilliantly done. I did not know that the 36th chamber was that he wanted to go out and teach. But I do love like that. It's
the chamber in which you make a decision about yourself as it pertains to your teachings. So that's why there is no like solid 36th chamber. That is for the person who is trained to that level to hopefully meld into what their teachings help them understand.
Yes, which you definitely get by that end sequence where he's training everyone. And he realizes this isn't just about going out and taking vengeance. This is a discipline that needs to be taught. And his character through this, and the discipline that is not just being shown to him, but that he is picking up. The montage, which I would argue, even though Rocky came out a couple of years before, that montage was great. And it continued on in many other films, including the rest of Rocky. This is a montage that really lies deep. And I think this is probably one of the better ones that ever came out. And I think that more movies need to take not just the idea of the montage from this, but the idea of how the montage drives the story. That's where I think we suffer here in America with montages. They always kind of extend the story. They push our hero a little bit forward, but this changes completely our hero. We see in his eyes change through. And I would love to hear what you guys think about the montage scene overall before we get into the full movie. Trevor, let's start with you. What, on a personal level, what does this training sequence mean to you?
Well, I think it needs to be pointed out that one of the beauties about this film is, on a technical level, it is a perfect 3-act drama. And I mean, of course, usually when you say training film, you think of Rocky. And we're not saying Rocky is not a monumental film and a film that exists to every generation. But I guess the question goes back to you, because you just revisited the film, is, and this has been pointed out many places before, is the aspect of revisiting something you really, really liked or you felt in high esteem, but when you revisit it in older eyes, you're kind of like, oh crap,
Yeah.
what's the deal? This is a film that is truly universal and does not need a timestamp because it is so focused on the self, but also focused on political and social ideas that were poignant for that time, but are also poignant for any time.
Yeah.
And that's why this film is so beautiful. And the use of, I mean, it's a hefty training montage, if you want to refer to that as versus an act, but it's heavy.
Yeah, well, it can be an
And
act, but it is a
that's the
montage.
big thing. That's why I think it separates itself from a lot of films. It truly values the aspect of hard work and training, and you will fail, but time is very important, and time just helps you understand what happened before. So the fact that this is more of a lackadaisical training element to the film is so important.
Well, I mean, I would say this training. I mean, it is a montage overall because you are seeing this man train into exactly what we're hoping, right? But and I compare it to Rocky because America's, our filmmaking. That I'll always hold Rocky up to a pinnacle. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that's how independent that movie was. So, and it's just 3-act structure in America is way different than in other countries. But this, I will say, like, even if you take it out, the first and second act are very short, very short. Like, this is the meat and potatoes of the movie. And the beauty of it is very little is said throughout. That's why I think it holds to that montage so well. Like and like we were talking about earlier, that the story is in the fight and things like that. Once we get past that, once he gets to that fight, that's a whole different montage. Now this is him taking everything we've seen and putting it to perfect use.
Well, yeah, and it's the process is never ending.
Yeah,
and that's something that's continued in the following films. But even in this film, it's implied because does anybody remember what the 35th chamber is?
Wait. Wasn't it protecting?
It's called enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
He goes up and they're just tapping on the and they're doing sutras because they've exited the world. All this is in service of a raising of the consciousness, like you guys alluded to. His personal revenge, then he sees a political sort of consciousness, an expansion of it, a universality. But there's an even higher universality of a spiritual sort of progression and growth. And for a Buddhist, all that is unified because it's holistic, whereas we tend to divvy up our categories. And that's important to remember. For Lao Long, the hard work is the point. The hard work is what actual Kung Fu isn't fighting. Kung Fu is hard work, and the fighting is a consequence of undertaking it. And the duty of society is for us to pass on our knowledge to the next generation to prepare them, which is why student and teacher relationships abound in all of his films, and especially in this one as well.
Yeah, and to add to that point, even seeing Santee's character and his reactions at every point. So, and for everybody listening, there's a wonderful scene where when you want to go to lunch, you have to jump over it's like this little like pocket of water, and you have to jump over it. But there's like a bundle of logs tied together that everyone's sort of just using as a stepping stone to jump over. And Santee's looking at it, and he's not used to. He falls off his first time, and he can't eat until he's clean. So like it plays this whole thing. What I loved about it is he went and he practices, but the thing that really drive this point home of like teacher and student is the first time he sees the sticks undone. The teachers now watched all these students laugh at him when he fell in. He has now mastered it and he did it. And so they take it apart and now they have to teach him on, but it's never to demean or diminish anybody. It's to strengthen. You guys laughed at him. Now try and figure it out. It's harder. And this way you're going to find balance. This way you're going to find, but to go back to my original point of this, to add to yours, Santi's face when he sees that is what we see every single time a challenge arises. He thinks about it, and that felt like such a main principle in this of like what they're trying to get through to everybody. It was like, think about everything that's coming through. Think about it quickly, but think about it, and you'll find your way out. That's how you find your peace. And I really like. There's so many messages that are just conveyed in this brilliantly and subtly with just so many little things, and I love that about this. I appreciate you picking it, Trevor. Now I'd like to get into more of the personal side of this movie and what it means to you. Well, I can see how excited you are to talk about it, and I know it's really something you love and I'm very passionate about too, Trevor. So let's start with you, Will. What does this movie mean to you?
Well, I think when we talk about it being universal, and when we talk about it being a story that resonates without words, what we're alluding to is that it speaks to real human life. And I think that's why it has such a connection throughout our pop culture, and it can speak to different people at different times, because we all have to overcome challenge, and we all strive to get better, and we all recognize in ourselves our faults and want to put in the work. And when we see that process of someone improving over time, putting it just like Rock, putting in the time, putting in the effort, it's inspiring because it reminds us that we too can grow and change. We're not even talking about a modern or a postmodern idea. These are pre-modern ideas. These are ancient ideas, which is why they can speak to an African-American rapper in Staten Island, as well as they can speak to the audience that it was intended for in Hong Kong. And to get a little less, maybe even philosophical about it, it's just a beautifully crafted film. Even some great Hong Kong films, because they're not subject to Western 3-act structure, can sometimes feel a little alien to us, but this is a perfect beat. We feel right at home in it. The opening sequence before he even gets to Shaolin, where the carriage is attacked by the general with the giant axe, and we're introduced to our main villain, played by Lo Lei, is fantastic. And it's the process of overcoming. And I think in our culture now, you get hit, you get knocked down. There's not a lot of unambiguous, heroic, inspiring stories. We're very cynical about them. And this is wisdom and faith about our capacity to get better with a little twinkle in the eye. So it's not, as you alluded to before, the scenes where he's messing up in training and then he gets it, those can be amusing. I just think that it's a profoundly wise and uplifting film, and that's what I love about it. Even as I love so many Shaw Brothers movies, that's what makes this particular one special.
I love that. And I completely agree with you. I actually want to jump on this and show this to my kids. Because I really think it also teaches you how to be teachable and coachable. It's not about, and I try to convey that to so many people, like especially younger, when I'm talking to them, and that idea of, yeah, you failed and that sucks, but that's not it. Like, keep going, keep practicing, keep getting better for yourself. That's what's important, to keep getting smarter for yourself. Like all of this enlightenment, and you bringing it up with the 35th chamber, and the fact that that's their final, you are finally going to be enlightened. You're going to finally get why we do all this, and it's not why you think it is. But I kind of also like that he doesn't get to that 35th chamber until after the movie's over.
Yeah, it's very much brought to his attention, and as Will stated out, it's done, or I never stated, but a very respectable way. That when he, gets to the point that he can even, try to operate within the Shaolin Temple, he's cocky, and they allow him to do what he says he can do. It's just very matter of fact. And that's very important, I think, in really understanding the training, that, you cannot make further steps until you're willing to take the I out of it. And you will not learn to put your failures to sleep or learn upon your actions, and they are not truly failures, until you allow yourself to let go. And a training situation works so well. That's why a fight film, or as I say, Rocky is the same element here. So I like the fight film works is it shows you a process. And I mentioned about time. I just want to mention it again that this is a great 3-act structure about 30, 30, and a little bit over 40.
Yeah.
It is very important that this is one of the few films that really is the meat of the film is the training. A lot of training is shown in kung fu films, Shaw Brother films, etc., etc., etc. But most filmmakers and most producers would cut it up into a very tight montage. This makes the viewer go on his trip, Sante's trip, and makes the viewer slow down because you're packed with so much information in that first 30 minutes that it's almost hard to take a break. So I think that's one of the great things about how this film was written and how this film was executed, is I think it is, of the kung fu films that I've experienced in my life, the most truly personal.
Yeah, and even taken away from that, like what you're saying, like for me, it was a little bit more. My takeaway on it was, especially and brilliantly mapped out in the story. By the time you get to the end, and he's fighting with the sticks, and he's fighting this emperor, this warlord, it's he so understands he has this beat. He knows he has a beat, but his steps, every step he takes, you can see on his face, he's thinking, he's like, I'm cheating all of these people out of the honor of everything I learned. I'm only able to do this because I went through all 35 chambers. And that's, to me, that was his enlightenment. And like, just to see his character from the beginning to the end, but he, from the beginning, I mean, he just wants to go to the Shaolin and be like, come protect us. He didn't really have an interest in going and being a Shaolin until he gets there and he's hurt and he sees what's going on. I just, for me, like, that is brilliant writing within a standpoint. This is an absolutely Conradian story that emphasizes what I think we lose, especially, like, let's take Star Wars, for example, which is steeped in more Japanese lore, but it's very similar in its tone and its methodology, though. You got no training with Luke. Luke was in it to win. Luke never really asked questions. And I'm not putting, I love Star Wars. I'm not putting it down. It's great for what it is.
What about The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire Strikes Back is a good one to call back. But at the time, though, you could call back to that. But what's now the influence? Is this movie influencing that now? But 1977 versus 78, you get these two very different movies where it's like this young boy has to go out. So they told Luke's story in 3 movies.
Right.
And I know they told this one in 3, but you don't need 2 other movies for this to be a good story.
Right.
And the same with Star Wars. But tell me that you don't see enough training in Star Wars.
Right. I think Lucas is, so yeah, I think that it was Kasdan's influence in Empire that kind of gave the Yoda scene serious.
Kasdan's a major film geek. Yeah.
Well, I would more put it on Irving Kershner. If anything, he had a lot. He was steeped in that to make the story different.
Kasdan and Kershner both have a big influence of that film. But I think what's interesting is too, when you talk about this movie, the second one is actually a reversal of this film. So in an interesting way, and it speaks to something that you said, Mick, about being coachable. Return to the 36 Chambers, Gordon Liu plays a man who is put through the chambers, but he finds shortcuts through all of them. And Sante has to teach him, he's too clever. So for example, the walking up the hill with the water, he finds ways to lean, he finds like cheats to get through it. He's too smart. And he has to learn Kung Fu without realizing that he's being taught Kung Fu by doing the roof of the temple and watching all the guys do Kung Fu. And then he realizes that he's been training with his movements the whole time. And the reason I bring that up is because it underlines the message in this film. The hard work is the point. It can't be passed through. It can't be skipped through, because the Kung Fu is the hard work.
Yeah. which I got from this one as well, and I'm actually excited to check out the sequel to see that aspect, because from what you're telling me, and Trevor, I'd love to hear your take as an educator. Like, there are some students you can't get through to.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that you can, but like in your normal teaching habits, right? Sometimes you got to go outside of it. And I would love to see this movie to see how they handle that. That sounds so intriguing to me to take it into that direction.
Also, one thing I wanted to build off what you were saying, because you pointed out in the beginning, in the beginning when the guy, I think they're at a meeting of like spies against the Manchu, and somebody's like, oh yeah, I learned at Shaolin, good Kung Fu. He recognizes from the beginning that Shaolin Kung Fu could be useful to fight the Manchu. But what he learns is that the Kung Fu, the fighting is only useful in that it develops the self.
Yep.
And that's why it's got to be the 36th chamber, to go through to teach this spiritual development and physical development that happen together to everybody, to raise up everybody else. And you're right, that is his enlightenment. He doesn't need, some people need to be monks away from the world, some people need to be in the world, and he needs to be in the world.
And now I'm even more excited to check out that sequel with that premise, him being the perfect person to do it, because he was the one that had to be enlightened by going out and seeing different teaching.
Right.
And I'm very excited to watch the rest of this trilogy. And as we're kind of coming down towards the end, I want to go over final thoughts of each of you about this movie, and maybe make a plea for people to check it out and why. Get your different perspectives on that. But let's start with you, Trevor. What do you think?
Well, I just kind of wanted to touch upon a couple things. As far as how would the structure of this film and how this film really kind of affect me as far as how to get out of a level of mental illness that I never thought I would. I never, hoped that was possible. So, Santi goes in, he does want assistance, but he still is very cocky. So you can almost kind of view him as, kind of your id, your, this is potentially you and how you are viewing things. And with mental illness, it is extremely hard to get the I out of it. With mental illness, you can find yourself focusing on that because the idea of anybody else or what they're thinking at the time is a very scary thing for you. So when he discovers what the 35th chamber is and basically gets a wake-up call to, this is what you're looking for. It's not all the quick, fun, kung fu, I'm a, master thing. It's leading to an element of being able to, free yourself to believe in something. The 36th chamber is exceedingly important because in this film, you see that it gets him to actually teach other people and things of that nature. But for me, it was coming to a place where you're able to empathize with people in a way that you don't automatically go to the I. That when you deal with people and you communicate with people, there's a reason for why they act and they say the things they do. And that was the training for me, because as I said, with mental illness, and I'll be upfront on here, bipolar 1, ASD, and ADHD, that I is all encompassing, but it's not in a narcissistic way. It's not in a way that you feel better than everyone. It's like something is literally just covering you and all you have is I. That to be able to emerge from that and start processing in a way that doesn't automatically lead you to go, this person said this, so they think this, they think this, they think this, they think this. It's like, why did you say that? Let me ponder this, is a very important way to try to just be with other humans. So
one thing I will also mention too about his character, and that's a great point to kind of coincide those two ways of thinking. Santi is such a great character, and the way he thinks outside the box, just, and I'll use that as a term, something different. is also not belittling Teddy.
Mm.
He's not out there thinking he's the best of the best. He's just trying to reach his goals. And that's one thing I really enjoyed about this character, was that he is cocky. He seems brash at times. But when he's in training, he is insanely disciplined. How often do you see somebody after hours of falling in and then having to clean and do all this stuff and being taken a task a few times, sits there and practices? Those are the ones that are going to get through, right? You know, those are the ones that are really going to, not that nobody's going to get through. I shouldn't say that, but those are the ones that are going to get through quick. And you can be the one that gets through quickly, and you turn around and you say, but he wasn't. By the time you get to it, he's helping people. And they're like, you're not supposed to be helping people. Now you're in trouble. Move on. You know, because they do understand that, like, this is the qualities that they're looking for in a master. And he thought of every aspect. This director and the writer thought of every aspect of this movie and what goes into these characters and who they have to become. And I appreciate that in a good writing. This is really well done. I do appreciate how you compared it to your mental health and how it's helped you, you know, see it differently. Thank you so much for seeing it.
Can I add one last thing?
Yeah, sure.
So the ability of removing or trying the best you can to remove the I out of yourself, to actually try to understand other people you deal with, and also people outside of your comfort zone, is a skill that as a world, as a populace of human beings, we suck at. And it's hard. It's very hard, but, you know, it's not, you know, I still have ups and downs. I still have issues, but it has allowed me to try to understand myself by truly opening myself up to what makes other people do what they do, and not ever just flat out, you know, making a flat generalization on somebody because of blank. And if for no other reason, so many people do that as their default setting, it's very important for those for people who really want to make a difference to at least try.
Yeah.
So
great point. I appreciate that. Good message too. Will, how about you, man? What this movie mean to you? I know you're very excited to talk about it, but please let us know.
If I wanted to give a like sort of elevator pitch why you should see the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, I would say you start with, this is a beautifully made film. It's well acted, it's well directed, it's well staged. Shaw Brothers backlot probably never looked better than it did in this film. So just on that first level, where sometimes, because, you know, Hong Kong filmmaking, sometimes they cut corners and everything. You may not be ready for what a beautiful production this is on that level. But then on the second level, it's an emotional story that you will understand and empathize with and get. Everybody has felt like they can't, and everybody knows that feeling of working towards a goal and achieving it. You know, when you learn to ride a bike, it's something that we deal with from childhood till the day we die. But then on that third level, this is a full emotional experience. There's comedy, other than romance. There's every kind of emotion that you would want in a film. It transports you to a different time, a different place, and it helps hold up a mirror to, you know, how we all feel. And I also think that this is, if you're interested in the martial arts, this is absolutely the martial arts film, if you haven't already seen it, that you should start with, because this is the purest evocation of why people do martial arts in the first place. And for that reason, among others, it's a wonderful gift to world cinema to be able to watch this.
Agreed. And know it, for me, rewatching it again as an adult with adult eyes and learning all these new things, which is, I suggest anybody who's seen something as a kid, go watch it with an adult perspective. It always helps. And to see different themes in this. One thing I really loved about the filmmaking in the first act and the third act is they open it up. So like when we get to the village and they're chasing Santee around, he is getting to a point where like it feels encompassing. It feels like a mad dash, a getaway. It's outside. It's filmed outside. It's very big. The soldiers are there. Then at the end, when he has his final fight, it's very big. It's on a cliffside and overlooking the ocean and mountains and everything. It's very beautiful. But everything else in this movie is very contained. all on sets, even though cemetery scene is on sets and in the village and everything. You never really get a broad scope of things. And I think that really helps with the direction of taking in the training more than when you get out into it and Santi's either running away or he's fighting in the beginning or the end of the movie. It is widely open. His world is now open. You said it's very universal, and I think that conveys really well. It was universal to begin with, then it became contained for his training, and now it's universally open again. Brilliantly done, well written, fantastic movie overall. Thank you, Trevor, so much for picking this one.
I hate to interrupt, but I just wanted to, one other thing, kind of putting a little bit of an idea of, Will and I. So Will and I ended up bonding over Asian cinema, and it was specifically John Woo. For me, it was The Killer, which also introduced me to Chow Yun-fat, Donnie Lee, but also introduced me to a little bit of a different element of, philosophy. I mean, if you talk to a lot of people our age, a lot of them ended up dipping their feet into world cinema and actually being a full-fledged cinema geek with Asian cinema. And I very much feel that, see, John Woo didn't just open Asian cinema for me. It was Woo and discovering Hong Kong that opened my eyes to horror and a lot of things that shaped me. So I think that's a very important element of just Asian cinema, which we'd go into all kind of. But it's also very important to understand that this film and other films of its ilk have been used as training films. These films are part of many people's childhood. The RZA. Why is it so important? How did it really, get into his head? And that was because these films were distributed to grindhouse and small cinemas for like 4 film showings. Extremely hot summer in the inner city. What do you do with your dad? You sit and you go to the movies. And these films were the ones that were doing so well. And, Buddhism, Shintoism, all these Eastern ideas of thought entered into a whole generation. And yet that brings back the idea of to actually be able to make a difference, to be able to take a stand. You must be able to take the stand for others before it becomes all encompassing of you. So, yeah.
Well, is there anything you want to add about the movie before we get on?
Only that it's a real pleasure to talk about it, and I hope that if you see it with an open mind, it causes you to look deeper into the Shaw Brothers catalog, because there's an amazing repository of great films there that are just underseen by cinemaphiles worldwide, and then I think are just now getting their due because they've been restored and remastered into such beautiful quality. And take the time to read my articles about them at forcesofgeek.com, cheap plug, and cityonfire.com, and just enjoy this journey through cinema that we go through. Because there's always an undiscovered country.
Exactly.
I am, and I'm definitely jumping on Luang's filmography. I want to see a lot more from him. I definitely want to see the other 2 movies in this trilogy. This is fantastic. I had such a good time with this. I can't wait to check it out. Again, I will be watching this movie again with my kids. And it is like, if I can sell anybody on checking this out, absolutely go do it. It is a well-crafted story. It's a fun story. Great characters. I think this is one of the only ones I can think of where it's completely male characters, right? There are no female characters in this.
I think the Miller's got a girlfriend, but you're right. Other than that, there's not a single other. Yeah. It's like The Thing. It's an entirely male film.
But and I don't want to make it a sexism thing or anything like that. I think of it more along the lines of like The Thing. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be that. It was meant to be that. Like, it wasn't meant to exclude anybody. It was just meant to tell this story at this time
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no. So for me, I appreciate stories that take, and I think they stand out. They take the chances like that and things like that and tell good stories for the sake of telling a good story.
And I think that it's worthwhile because you brought that up to very quickly mention that the earliest wuxia films were women. They had sort of virginal warrior goddesses who weren't really like you couldn't go up to them. They weren't like real people. And then after One Armed Swordsman, Hong Kong action was almost completely male dominated because that's where Shang Chi thought the money was. That's what he was interested in. Lau Kar Lung, through his career, as you investigate his filmography, brought back women to the fore, but also he's the first one who had them in kind of like, if you see My Young Auntie, where they're getting chased by the boys while they're fighting. You know what I mean? There's it's like how to navigate women in the martial arts in the modern age, as opposed to kind of the King Hugh woman in disguise that no one's actually, you know what I mean? No one's actually pursuing for love. So if you're interested in those themes and you're watching this cast, definitely check out My Young Auntie, which I believe is available on the first Shawscope volume from Arrow. And the film we've been watching is available, is available on the second, along with its sequels.
I love it. Perfect.
One little thing, I'm sorry to keep going.
No.
But one thing I wanted to point out was you mentioned, of course, about it being a very male-centric film. And it is also, at its core, a fight film. So, by nature, I mean, how I would view Rocky versus this film. Rocky is a celebration of masculinity. This
I
is
hard disagree with you on that.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, I apologize.
We're going to have to do another episode.
Yeah, just another episode in the fact that, so this film is about understanding yourself separate from your instinct. It is not an anti-masculinity film. It is a true film about personal development and understanding. And, you know, a lot of films, especially in this genre, don't have that element that, you know, to be enlightened, to be the next, to achieve your personal goals, you must remove yourself from yourself entirely.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify very quickly, like if it wasn't clear from what I was saying, Lau Kar Lung is somebody who really believes in meeting a good woman and having like a wife and children, and that's how we pass on the knowledge, and that's part of development, which is why one of his first films, Executioners from Shaolin, is literally about a woman and man from Shaolin who pass on their two kung fus to their son, who embodies some traits of both of them so that he can fight Pai Mei, who the character that Quentin Tarantino used in Kill Bill. So yeah, I would lean towards what you were sort of mentioning, that it's like The Thing, it's incidental that this is a completely male movie because that's what Shaolin Temple was like. That's just how the story went that time.
And also, I think it's important to mention too, and when it comes to stories like this, yes, it is important to, you know, to stick to tradition, but why the tradition was there and what it meant. And this film does it perfectly. The only thing I will hard argue when it comes to Rocky is, yes, every single Rocky film, including the Creed films, is all about masculinity. I will not argue. That first one, though, I would argue that it is one man's fight against the masculine world of which he's living.
I will agree with that.
That's it, and that's why I think that movie stands out as a masterpiece, is because you have this man, much like we have Sante going, and it is about introspective, him finding himself and what he wants, what's his goal. Everybody's telling him what he should go for, and then when he finally does it, he finds that enlightenment within himself, and that's why I think that is a great movie. I don't mind all of them, but I think
I'm not crapping on Rocky.
I think it's a testament to the 70s.
Yeah,
and the 70s itself,
it is American New Wave cinema of the 70s, and it does have all these aspects, but you know, it has a lot to do with the internal story between him and Adrian and everything. And this is a very, okay, you are still functioning, but you hit a point where you're no longer battling the eye. I don't know.
Yeah, but no, I want to say thank you guys for all of your insights on this film and getting me to watch it and then coming on here and talking about it. Absolutely love this film. I cannot wait to catch the rest and really kind of deep dive, looking into new stuff, and especially I'm very excited to see this director's work. So I want to say thank you guys again. We're gonna have all your links down below, so make sure to go check them out and follow for more. These are two very smart men who know their movies, so go and check them out and hang out with them and be a part of it. And I want to thank you guys again for jumping on. Will, Trevor, really appreciate you. Go down in the links below. Go check them out. What's going on, guys? We're talking about the movie Goodrich. I'm reviewing it for this episode, and of course stars Michael Keaton, Mila Kunis. Michael Keaton plays an older gentleman who's married to a younger woman, has two young twins, and a boy and a girl that he has never really been around for. Mila Kunis plays his daughter from another marriage who he also neglected as growing up. He was always sort of a nice guy, but very into his work. He's an art dealer. But when his wife has to go to rehab because she finds herself having some problems, he is thrust in and he has to take over just everyday, day-to-day life of not only just being a business owner, but being a single father, taking care of two kids that he really doesn't know much about. And he's trying to connect with his older daughter, maybe have her help him while she's pregnant herself. And through this, he learns to discover himself and who he wants to be as a father and as a man. That's right. Michael Keaton did a great job in this movie. His performance definitely stands out, but the movie overall was just sort of a miss for me. The story just wasn't there. I didn't think Mila Kunis's character had a lot of depth to her until the very end. That's when you start to really get in there. But it was too late by that point, and he really did pick up the pieces and try and pick up and become a better person. So there was not so much in the way of drama of like he really needs to change. He needed to become more aware of what was going on around him and his family and everything like that, less engaged in work, and start balancing out his life. And once he does, it hits its stride and it becomes really good. Now, when it comes to certain elements of this movie, like the wife leaving and her reasons for not talking to him, things like that, it just didn't really fit well in the movie. It seemed very jarring. There was no real explanation or closure on some things, but it wasn't a bad movie. I give it a 2 out of 5. That's my rating for this one. I'd love to know what you guys think. Sound off. Let us know. This is our reviews. Of course, we're doing them a little bit differently, so I hope you enjoy them. Let us know what you think of the movie. Like I said, sound off in the comments, or you can head over to our Discord. But let's get started on our next review. We're reviewing the movie Here, and that's right. The movie just stays in one spot. That's the whole gimmick of this film. The camera stays in one spot, follows a room. Now it goes from the prehistoric days to the Native American days to Benjamin Franklin for some reason, and a whole bunch of other people that live in this house that's right in the way, and we see outside the picturesque window. But our main focus of this story are the stars Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Kelly Riley, and Paul Bettany. They play part of this family. Paul Bettany and Kelly Riley play a married couple that right after World War II, they buy this house and they raise their family, and we get to watch that all the way through, how he raises this one son, and his son stays in the house and his family, and kind of like the trials and tribulations that go through everyday living in this home. It's an interesting tale. Robert Zemeckis, one of my favorite directors, whom I love, but in my opinion hasn't made a really good movie since Flight. It's just been sort of a miss for me. Like, this is a very cool gimmick. It's different. It's within his wheelhouse of sentiment, but also giving us some really clever shots and things like that, and some visual effects that really stand out. But for me, it just didn't hit. It was kind of a cheesy story to begin with. It doesn't really give you too much. It cuts way too much all over the place. I mean, the Benjamin Franklin thing kind of throws me off. Then you get to the Lazy Boy and then some pilot, and like there's just too many stories, and I get where the themes meet. It's just too many personalities trying to keep track of while you're watching this movie. And then when you get into it, you start getting sentimental, you start caring about these characters, and they cut to a completely different character. I didn't love this movie. I give it for its experimental nature and some very cool shots and some really clever stuff and some fun acting at times. I give it a 2 out of 5. It isn't something that really blew me away. It's nothing I'll probably ever check out again, and I did not like any of the visual effects when it came to the de-aging process. But overall, I mean, this has a lot of sentiment. I think a lot of people might really check it out. So let us know what you think. Sound off in the comments or head over to our Discord, check it out. Hey guys, it's time for our new mixed movie pick of the week, and I went with one of my all-time favorites, who was actually given to me to see first time only about 5 years ago from our guest Trevor tonight. I absolutely love this movie. It's called The Wages of Fear. It's about a few South American men who are hired to drive trucks of nitroglycerin all the way through the mountains to get it over to to a burning fire that desperately needs to be put out. I absolutely love this movie. The tension in it is better than anything I've ever seen in any movie. I absolutely stand by that. It was made in 1953, so go check this one out. It has subtitles, it is a foreign film, but it is definitely worth it. It's hard, it's heartbreaking, it's thrilling, and there's so much to it. Let us know what you think. We also did our classic film reviews, so go check us out on YouTube. You gotta hit like, you gotta hit subscribe, and you gotta hit the bell so you know when stuff like that comes out. We go a little more in depth on those shows when we get into the background and such, so I can't wait for you to check that out. Remember, Wages of Fear, everybody, from 1953. Let us know what you think. Hey guys, thanks for watching our show. Really, truly appreciate you being here. Guys, if you are enjoying this or like the Scene Snobs, make sure that you're joining up. Join up over on our Patreon. We're doing a giveaway right now for Thanksgiving. We'll be doing more in the future for sure, but we got a lot of fun stuff going on over there, and that's our main hub. Also get you into our Discord, so you got to just join up on our Patreon. Down below, free or paid tiers get you in, but we really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We love movies. We know you do too, so join the Snob Nation. Hit like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell. We're on some social media, so go check us out there. Definitely be a part of it. We love having you, and we're getting ready for some more fun times for Christmas coming up, so please let us know what you think. Sound off. We can't wait, and be a part of it. Until next time, remember to be kind, stay classy, and take care of yourselves. Take care.